What is up, everybody? It is Tuesday night, so we've got a blast off with my guy Sunil in the NASA sweatshirt. But for those of you that say we're always late, this show is scheduled to start at 10:15 Eastern time. It is 10:05. We want our credit, damn it, because we will be late next week. Book it. That being said, there's a ton to talk about. There's a rumor that the 49ers are interested in Boyd. We got to talk about Brock Purdy expectations and so much more. We're going to do all of that next. All right. Welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. Like I said, it's Tuesday, which means I got my guy, So Real, Sunil in the building. What's up, Sunil?
Jesse, I know I texted this to you, but I wanted to share with the wider audience. Okay. Jesse Naylor, my friend, his reach is deep. I have now come across another member of just random society that I run into that recognizes me from this Last Second Sports platform. So I want to continue to give you your kudos, sir, for not only, being a great person, but also creating a great platform that, people recognize your guests on. That's how much they are engrossed and ingratiated into your audience, man. So props to you. It was random. I was on a walk, met somebody that, was actually a security guard in my apartment complex, and he knew me from the Jesse Naylor show. So pretty exciting.
That was pretty funny. You said that to me. I go, oh, we're international now, huh? All right. I like it. Here we go. I sent you the So International song by Be Legit. So yeah, that was pretty cool, man. That's
I don't know so really much about international because I do live in California, but hey, I got the sentiment, right? I got the sentiment. Geography, not really Jesse's thing, but hey, it's a thought that counts.
I say, isn't that me? California's not international? Is that not how it works? No, I'm just kidding. That's so funny. Yeah, man, that's pretty cool, man. That's pretty cool to be recognized by a random person from our show, man, our podcast. So that's pretty humbling to hear, man. But we got a great show to deliver tonight. Some awesome topics. It's tough coming up with topics this time of year, I will say. And I'm going to give credit right back. Usually when I do these shows, I come up with pretty much all the topics, except for Tuesday. Sunil comes through in the clutch knowing that I'm talking all week about whatever topics, and he always has something fresh to bring to the table. And I absolutely love it, Sunil. Thank you for always holding it down with the topics. But tonight, the first topic kind of writes itself, and that is the 49ers' interest in receiver Tyler Boyd from the Cincinnati Bengals. This one's really interesting. On the surface, it could mean that the 49ers might be finding their backup plan to Brandon Aiyuk if they make that trade. I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but what are your thoughts on this situation?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, though, Jesse, because Tyler Boyd isn't just like a flex receiver, right? He's not just a throwaway guy, just a guy that pads it's not a wide receiver depth piece. Like, this is somebody who you're going to have to pay decent amount of money. He's not in that top tier class where, he's going to be making 22, 25, 30 million a year, but he's not,
like 10,
Yeah. He's not like, and they've already tendered Juwan Jennings. So they have that third piece, right? So it's like, where would Tyler Boyd really fit in? He's going to be a number one, number two receiver. I technically supposed to have your number one, number two with Aiyuk and Debo, but them being interested does point in the direction to me that if the reports are true, and you never know this time around, somebody in the comment section said half the league is attached to Tyler Boyd right now, which is pretty accurate. But
he's not lying.
But the 49ers being on that list, I think does does have something to do with maybe how negotiations are going. Now, we all know that they don't get too deep into negotiations till closer to training camp. That's just been the 49ers MO. And more times than not, they're going to get the deal done. But the fact that they're attached to such a, high level receiver, I should say, does at least make me pause a little bit to be like, this is interesting, because this would only be them doing their due diligence, because they might need a plan B, like you mentioned, if the Aiyuk stuff doesn't go down. And unfortunately, you never know what reports are true, what reports are not. There are reports coming out that, the 49ers are likely to trade Aiyuk. Some are saying they're unlikely to trade Aiyuk, but you never know. All we know is that Aiyuk wants to get paid. We know that the 49ers want him, but it's a money thing. And are they going to be willing to pay Aiyuk the money that he's looking for? And maybe if that asking price is too high, maybe bring in a guy like Tyler Boyd, draft somebody in the draft, could be the plan B. I think that Aiyuk is way better than Tyler Boyd, but once again, it's how good plus the amount of money you save on the wide receiver room.
Well, here's one thing I want to say, and I read through pretty much everything I could find on this situation, hoping to see when these conversations happen, and that was omitted from these reports. So the question becomes, free agency is what, 3 weeks in, 3.5 weeks in?
Mm-hmm.
When did these conversations happen? Are they just now happening, or did they happen very early on in free agency before Jawan Jennings was back on the 49ers? That is the question that I have, because that changes everything. If it was 3 weeks ago and they showed interest then, that changes this whole outlook, because maybe he was supposed to be wide receiver number 3. They were seeing if the price was close with Jawan. Obviously, he's a more proven receiver. Tyler Boyd's gone over 1,000 yards twice in this league. That would be an upgrade. So maybe that's the route. But let's keep it within the last few days. They've kicked the tires on Boyd because this is just now being reported. Here's the way that I could see this going down. If they did trade Brandon Aiyuk, my hope would be that they would sign Boyd to a 2-year deal. That would cover Aiyuk for this year and Debo for next year. Because the thought is, if you trade Brandon Aiyuk, maybe you draft an offensive lineman with that pick. You stay at 31 with your second pick. You draft your receiver or vice versa. That receiver has to get acclimated, doesn't play a ton his rookie year. So that's where Tyler Boyd comes in this year. And then next year, that rookie receiver is able to step in, and you've got Boyd as your number 2. And then you can cut Debo, trade Debo, whatever you're going to do to save the money that you need to save going forward there as well. So that's what I would look at. But I really am curious to see where these conversations, or when rather these conversations happen, because that really changes this whole thing.
Sure. And, you're absolutely right, because I didn't look detailed as far as when. I kind of just, all of it's coming out recently, right? And once again, just like the guy in the comment section said, half the league, there's a lot of teams that are interested in Tyler Boyd, and rightfully so. But you're right. When these negotiations happen, I just saw Brother Bob's super chat where he's saying, this is just negotiation 101, trying to rattle BA. Absolutely. Right now, it's a lot more about smoke and mirrors, right? Obviously, It seems like BA and his team are putting it out there as far as they want the money or trade them. The 49ers could be taking back some of that power and the narrative and looking, or it could all be above board and everybody's just looking at their options, right? Because ultimately this is a league, and we know Brock Purdy is going to get paid potentially next year. So at this point, the 49ers are going to have to make some tough decisions, and we already saw it with, Eric Armstead. Brandon Aiyuk is another one that it's a decision that they have to make. So yeah, it was just interesting to see. And I do think it does point to the fact that this BA re-signing isn't as foregone of a conclusion as maybe some of us would like it to be. And that's not necessarily on the 49ers side. It could be on, Brandon Aiyuk's side, because ultimately, man, the dude deserves to be paid. And I do think that if he got more opportunity, he'd be a bigger name in this league. And I think his production has shown that, and his progression. We were just debating that. His progression year after year definitely shows that he can, if he's not already an elite receiver, Jesse, he can definitely be one if given the opportunity in the right position. So I don't think Aiyuk is necessarily saying anything out of the ordinary. I think he's actually handled everything really well. He's continuing to work out with the 49ers. He's kept all the 49ers stuff on his Instagram, and he hasn't said he doesn't want to be here. He just wants to get paid, or give him the opportunity to get paid. And I think that's that's the right mentality to have.
Yeah, John Penley, Lions fan, wants Boyd. That actually would make a lot of sense. But Cryptic, I got to say, you know what? I thought this as well. I was like, man, Boyd has kind of been injury prone. That's not actually the case when you look at it. He's played, let's go his last 4 seasons. 15 out of 16 games he played. 16 out of 17, 16 out of 17, and 17 out of 17 the last 4 years. So he's been relatively healthy. And then the year prior to that, even we can go a 5th year back, 16 out of 16, 14 out of 16. So, I mean, he's been relatively healthy. He had 1 year where he was a little bit banged up, and that was in 2017, but he's actually been a lot healthier than what I thought. Now, I know he gets nicked up a little bit. He's been spotty in some of those games. Maybe he's left him early, but as far as actually taking snaps, he's played a lot more than what I actually expected. So I don't know. But I mean, he's definitely not Brandon Aiyuk by any means, but pretty good receiver. So, and healthier than what I suspected. I was kind of with you, Cryptic, and thought it was a lot worse than that, but it's not.
If it does come out that these are recent negotiations, like you mentioned, what do you think that says about how negotiations are going? Do you read into that, or is it just everybody kind of doing their due diligence?
No, I definitely would read into it a little bit, in the sense that you're not making contingency plans if everything's going the way that you would expect them to go. Now, this is what's interesting about the Brandon Aiyuk situation. On the surface, there's not really a lot to be worried about, because the 49ers always sign guys late. Plus, we know that they hold all the cards, because they can make him play out his 5th year deal. They can franchise tag him twice. They can do whatever. However, the difference is, and I broke this down on my show yesterday, 2025, the 49ers are low-key in cap hell, which means they've got to find a way to clear cap space. Well, getting rid of Brandon Aiyuk is a very easy way to do that. Now, that doesn't mean they have to get rid of Brandon Aiyuk, but if you're going to trade him, you also would have to do that before the draft or during the draft. You're not going to trade him after the draft. So if he is the most tradable asset you have, because every dollar that you're going to pay him would come off the books, there is no dead cap, and he's going to net you the most value in return, you have to kick the tires. And if he is at, say, $27.5 million and the 49ers think he's worth 23, well, that's a wide gap. That's a big deal. I think 23 is a slap in the face, but I think 27.5 million is probably a bit too rich. So you really got to figure things out. Every dollar counts in these negotiations. And I think the 49ers talking with Brandon Aiyuk's agent early is them gauging if it is even possible to get a deal done. If they feel like, hey, Brandon Aiyuk's at this astronomical number that we're just not going to be willing to meet, it's probably better to get rid of him during the draft. I could see that scenario playing out. Most likely, I believe he stays a 49er, but I think that if they have kicked the tires recently on Boyd, that tells you that they're exhausting all avenues just in case they need to move him on draft night.
What did Debo come in at? Was his like
23?
23?
Yeah, 23 and a half, something like that.
So you would assume it'd have to be higher than Debo.
You would, but if the report that came out from ESPN is correct, which is they're far apart, that tells me they're closer to that Debo number than what they should be. Because Debo signed 2 years ago. Brandon Aiyuk at this point is a better player than Debo, arguably, I guess, but I think he's a better player, better receiver.
Well, the stats show it.
Yeah, exactly. So, but that means they're probably closer to that Debo number. And that's, he's not happy with that. So I don't know. We'll see.
That's a regression. We're going to try to use
a
all of these words. We should have named this
it
regression progression because, definitely 2 years later, you would think that the money needs to progress, not regress.
Exactly. All right, let's talk about some 49ers this year, or a 49er. We can maybe go down the list if there's multiple guys, but give me a player that you think their stock is going to be up after this upcoming season on the 49ers roster.
I'm going to go Jair Brown. And the reason why I'm going him is because I think, some of these reports that came out, Mike Silver, who I think has been on the nose pretty much with a lot of his reporting this offseason, did mention that Hufanga wasn't guaranteed a starting role. And I think that has somewhat to do about, the way that Brown came in and held his own. He didn't get a lot of starting opportunity early in the season. He wasn't taking, first rep stats, in his first offseason with the Niners. And I think this offseason he's going to get that opportunity, right? And he seems to be a guy who is a disruptor. He seems to be a guy that just has a knack for being in the right place at the right time. And a lot of the same things that Hufanga did in his all-pro season are similar to, what Jair Brown does. I don't think he's as aggressive of a tackler as Hufanga is, but what Hufanga was able to bring to the 49ers defense kind of like made a lot of us as fans just be like, wow, this is awesome to have somebody that could actually get interceptions, somebody that's flying around the field and making these exciting plays. And I think Jair Brown has that ability, and I think he's just going to get more opportunity. And we've seen, Hufanga had that year in his second year, and this is going to be Jair Brown's second year. So I expect his stock to raise and actually make maybe a guy like Hufanga expendable because they play pretty similar.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Well, I don't know if you realize this, but I was going through the free agents next year. They have 39 unrestricted free agents. You realize that 3/5 of their starting secondary, if you include the nickel corner, are free agents next year. That's crazy. You've got Diamador Lenore, Hufanga, Ambry Thomas, or Yadam, whoever you think is going to start over there. You've got Charvarius Ward. All of those guys are unrestricted free agents next year. So I'm hoping that Brown, his stock is way up because he might be the only guy coming back at this rate. So we'll see, but I hope his stock is way, way up. All right. I'm going to go to another position group that is going to lose potentially two of their three top guys in Campbell and Dre Greenlaw, both also unrestricted free agents. This is a player that should be no surprise if you've been here for a while. It's funny because, I think a lot of people took out of training camp that I had some agenda with Trey Lance, but the real agenda that I was pushing the whole time was a Jalen Graham agenda. This kid looked really, really good his rookie year. He was competing in one-on-one drills. He was actually the best player that I saw in the one-on-one drills, a drill that is meant to make the offensive player look good, but not him. He didn't let him look good. He was stifling everybody. I just think he's super athletic. He also fits the mold of safety turned linebacker. That is exactly what the 49ers do. And when you bring in a guy like Campbell, who's older and on the downside, you've got Greenlaw coming off of an injury. We'll see what they do in the draft, but they're not big on playing rookies anyways. I think that means that Winters or Graham has to step up. I think Graham's just the better player, the better fit for the 49ers. So I'm going to go with him to step up. And if he steps up in a way that I think, if he's as talented as I think he is, there's a possibility that at the end of the year, people are okay letting Greenlaw walk which would be a major turn. When you think about it, Greenlaw is a guy who missed the second half of the Super Bowl, and everybody's like, listen, if he doesn't get hurt, the 49ers win that game. I love Greenlaw, but coming off of an Achilles, we'll see what that looks like. And I just think that Jalen Graham can be a stud in this league. I'm really excited to see what he looks like as he progresses through this year.
Yeah, and I would agree. I think we both picked positions where new starters have the opportunity to play with, the injuries and maybe some of the question marks at those positions, because pretty much everywhere else we kind of know who the player is and who's been starting. I could add Demo there as well. I think he can make another stride.
Yeah.
Obviously it's going to be a kind of like a contract year for him if the 49ers don't extend him. I haven't heard much talk about it, and it's kind of confusing to me, Jesse, why they're not locking him in. But maybe they're going to get his deal done near to training camp as well. But I mean, I think he's much like Aiyuk has been progressing year after year after year. And we've seen, you look at his numbers, what PFF puts out, and as far as, you even saw from the bonus he received as well. He's a highly productive player, been outplaying his draft, where he was drafted consistently. And, he would be somebody that you would hope would be in the long-term future plans of the 49ers. But yeah, I expect him to ball out this year just because he might need to so that he can lock down his big money payday.
Yeah, absolutely. It's tough, man. For anybody that didn't watch the show last night, I highly recommend going and checking it out. The 49ers are going to be a very, very different team in 2025. You can book that right now. Very different team than what they are now. There's going to be a lot of turnover, and I think that they're going to have to retool on the fly. They're going to have to hit on this draft. They're going to have to hit on next year's draft. It's going to be crucial. But this team is going to be very, very different next year. It just has to be. The money-wise, they cannot make it work across the board. They're going to have to clear, on top of 39 unrestricted free agents, they're going to have to clear just to get next year's draft picks under the cap around $35 to $40 million and find a way to bring back some of their key free agents. It is not going to be easy. And oh, by the way, you got to find a way to pay Brock Purdy going forward as well. There's a lot of things that are going to happen next year. This is it for the 49ers. This crew, as it's currently constructed, this is it. So, Danny, y'all. I just feel like that's the proper way to say that.
I think you said it properly. Yeah, I think you said it
perfect. Rebuild begins next season. Need O-line and another receiver. Then we are in a good position. Shanny will find a running back when CMC leaves. Debo gots to go. And then Danny Y'all says season after next rebuild. Yeah, I think that it might come next season, but we'll see. And I don't think it's a full rebuild, because if you re-sign Brandon Aiyuk, you find a way to bring in like a Diameter or Lenore. If Jalen Graham can hit, like we talked about, Jair Brown, you've still got Fred Warner, you still got Bosa, you still got Purdy. So you're still going to have some talent there. It's not a full rebuild, but it is a major retool on the fly. And maybe, you make it to the first round of the playoffs, you're down for a year or two, losing in the wild card, and then I think you can bounce right back. But this team, as you see it now, if you love the players on this team and you love the way it's constructed, take in this season and enjoy it, because I believe next year it's going to look completely different.
Yeah.
So
49ers are definitely going to have to get better at drafting in the first round. Because they haven't been very good.
A little hit and miss, a little dicey there, a little dicey.
More miss than hit. I mean, when they hit, they hit, right? When they hit, it's an all-pro. When they don't hit, they're not on the team, right? It's either all-pro or bust. And fortunately, there's been more busts than all-pros.
Yeah, that is unfortunate. All right, let's talk about Brock Purdy and what some of your expectations are for him for this next season. What would you like to see from Brock Purdy in 2024?
Yeah, Jesse, I think I'm a lot higher on Brock Purdy than you are, and that's not to say you're not high on him. I just think that you're a little more tempered in your expectations. You kind of think he is what he is. And I think whenever, I think people wrongfully attack you because you look at it from a financial perspective more than the player itself. You just don't think he's worth $50 million because that obviously changes the dynamic of a team. And I think that's understandable. To me, I look at more the character of Purdy and just what he's able to do on the field consistently. And to me, I look at, okay, what did he not have last year that he's going to have this year that could help him make him better? And I kind of looked at that too, right? In year one, he came in kind of half the year, or more than half the year, got thrown on. He was a third string. And then you were like, oh, well, he's going to have a full year starting to really show what he was able to do. And I think he took large steps, right? He had a MVP caliber season. And then I'm like, okay, well, what's different about this year from last year that he could plant his flag in and get better? And obviously he has that whole year under his belt. He has playoff experience. He's been able to do things that the 49ers haven't been able to do, which is, come from behind. He's been able to overcome adversity, overcome his own bad play in games and come in and make important drives when it matters. But he hasn't still had a full offseason as the number one QB in this system, which is what he's going to have this year. He's going to be fully healthy. He's going to have a full offseason as QB1. He's going to have pretty much the same team around him for the most part, at least the important pieces. Knock on wood that Aiyuk gets re-signed. And I think the sky's the limit when it comes to that. I think you saw that there's obviously room for improvement, but you've also seen a guy that is willing to put in the work, has the right mentality, and does get better. He doesn't continue to make the same mistakes over and over again. So to me, my expectations are that we're going to see the best version of Brock Purdy that we've seen. I think he's going to be even more comfortable in the system. I think the relationship between him and Kyle Shanahan is going to build even more trust. And I expect the same type of play, but better, basically. And I do think his decision-making will get better, Jesse. I do think that his timing with these receivers will get better, and just understanding where the ball needs to go overall, being a third year in the system, I think are all things that we're gonna see at a higher, more efficient clip. And he was pretty damn efficient last season as well. But I think he'll even be better this year.
Just Joe gets the assignment. He says, my expectation, progression.
I like that.
All right. I actually tend to agree with you. What I've been saying is I don't know statistically what it's going to look like. And I'm not going to throw out stats or anything there as far as what my expectations are. But I think that there's a world that exists where maybe statistically it possibly isn't as good as last year, but player for player, he's much better. Because stats don't always tell you the full story. I think he is going to be better. I think this offseason is going to serve him very well. He's now a married man. I think that does him well in his personal life. He just got some really good money, which was great for him, much deserved from the league. So that's all good stuff. But ultimately, this is his first full offseason. Offseason number 1, you're training to be in the league. Offseason number 2, he just was trying to get healthy and back on the field to try to take his job and make sure that it was his going forward. And offseason number 3, he knows it's his team. And even more so, this is kind of the passing of the torch from the old guard of this team to the new guard. And he's a part of that new guard. We just talked about it, how in 2025, things I believe are going to look vastly different on this team. Well, he's a part of moving forward. Now, whether I think he's worth $50 million or not is really beside the point. I think he's ultimately going to get that with the 49ers. And I think that he deserves every penny for himself on a personal level. The 49ers are going to pay him big money if he plays very well this year, and I expect him to play well. So I think what I would look for from him is just that better decision-making, snap in and snap out. Regardless of how many turnovers he had or didn't have, I think he still puts the ball in harm's way more than I would prefer for a guy that isn't necessarily going to put a team on his back and go score a couple late touchdowns with 30 seconds left, or score a late touchdown with 45 seconds left and no timeouts and you need a touchdown. He's not that dynamic of a player, but when he plays within the structure and he plays on time, he can put up elite numbers and look very, very good. The question is can you continue to limit the turnovers? And if you're putting the ball in harm's way as often as he does for a guy that actually doesn't turn the ball over a lot, then eventually those things start going against you as a player. I think that's where we're going to see a major improvement. I think we're going to look back on this year. And again, regardless of the stats, you can't choose when the ball is picked off. You can't choose when your receiver drops it and the ball pops in the air and an interception happens. But ultimately, what I would say is, I think his decision-making is going to look vastly improved this year, and that's what I'm looking forward to from Brock Purdy. That's a big area of opportunity for him, and I think that we're going to see that improve because he is more comfortable with his teammates within this offense, and that's what I'm looking for from him.
Yeah, and I mean, whether anybody wants to admit it or not, Shanahan believes in him, and I think that's
all that
that's a
matters.
huge factor. And what I mean by Shanahan believes in him, because people will be like, "Oh, well, Shanahan believed in Jimmy G." Well, I think the belief is different, where Shanahan doesn't feel like he has to limit the playbook with this quarterback, and I think that's huge. I think another year of Shanahan understanding who his quarterback is going to be huge as well, because for everybody that thinks I'm a Kyle Shanahan homer, like, I do think that Shanahan needs to evolve as well for this offense to even take that next step, right? And so, but I think that helps that he's not teaching a quarterback the system, which tends to kind of be what he has to do due to injuries or, whatever the case may be. He has at least a quarterback that he trusts, that knows the system. So now, instead of teaching them the X's and O's, it's more, hey, now how do we take the next step together? And we haven't seen that I would say we haven't seen that in the Kyle Shanahan regime at all. Would you say, Jesse? Because even there hasn't been back-to-back healthy Jimmy G years either. So
there hasn't
I would
been.
say this is the first time where they're really getting that opportunity. So hopefully, we see the fruits of that labor as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, and the other thing too is accuracy. Again, a lot of people look at completion percentage and they equate that with accuracy, but are you on target? And the guy that I always use as my example is CJ Stroud. And I compared him. It's funny because when I was looking at Baker Mayfield coming out, he was throwing to wide open guys. And I wasn't a big fan of Baker Mayfield. He put up all the numbers. He's throwing to wide open guys. When I watched CJ Stroud coming out, I thought he was the clear best quarterback in the draft, much like Baker Mayfield put up big numbers throwing to wide open guys, but it was the ball placement. There was a massive difference between Baker Mayfield and CJ Stroud and their ball placement. CJ Stroud is way more accurate and precise than what his completion percentage would suggest. I think Brock Purdy's not as accurate as his completion percentage would suggest as far as a ball placement and putting it in the perfect spot on a regular basis. And I think that gets better with timing and knowing the offense and all those things as well. So that's another area where I think that Brock Purdy can improve. All right, Brother Bob says 2025 equals no Debo, Juice, Hargrave. Let me see the cap hits over thecap.com or Spot Rack, sir. They'll give you all the cap hits. All of the cap hits.
And shout out to Brother Bob. He was dealing with the sickness, so glad to see that he's healthier, and I think we're meeting up Thursday, unless he flakes again.
Yeah, he'll definitely flake. I'll go to trial to be in or something. I don't know. Right. Give me an area where you think we might see some regression from the 49ers. And this is a pretty broad topic. I mean, this could be a position group. This could be a player. This could be a statistic. What do you think is going to regress this year on the 49ers?
I think this is just because the play there is always so high. I think the linebacker play, my guy.
Oh,
We saw the game, the Super Bowl, and this is something that I said the day of the Super Bowl. So this isn't revisionist history or anything like that. I said that if Dre Greenlaw didn't get hurt, the 49ers win the Super Bowl because that linebacker duo was able to pretty much lock up Travis Kelce. And when Dre went down, all of a sudden Travis Kelce was getting off, right? And you saw who was it? Oren Burks, I think, was the guy that was stepping in, constantly just chasing Travis Kelce, and wasn't making those instinctual plays that a Dre Greenlaw did. Now, I love everything that we're seeing from Dre Greenlaw right now. He sounds confident. Hey, I'm going to get back, and you're hearing that there's opportunities for him to be back, for the early of the season. But we also know, an Achilles is a tough injury to have. And it usually takes a year for people to get back to what they were, learning that injury. And a lot of times, you start making up with that injury with other parts of your body. So you start seeing other injuries happen because of an Achilles injury, right? So I know you said, hey, maybe Graham could come in and step in, but the level that Dre Greenlaw plays at, even if Dre Greenlaw is there, I don't know if we get the same Dre Greenlaw that was just like the flying around the field, being able to make all the tackles and all of that. And, I think Fred Warner will still be Fred Warner and he'll still be all pro Fred. But because Dre Greenlaw, I don't think is going to be the same. I think the overall linebacking group regresses because of that.
I'm going to be in the same area as you here, but I'm not going to narrow it down to linebackers. I'm going to say the defense as a whole is going to regress. It's interesting because there was a lot of talk about Steve Wilkes and all the things he didn't do and how it was a bad hire. We can talk about yards. We can talk about the run defense. We can talk about spots in the season. We can do all of that. But the reality of the situation was this team gave up less than 300 points in a 17-game season. That was third best in the NFL. Now they've got a first-time defensive coordinator. They've kind of got a tag team situation going on, WWE style, with Staley coming in as their other guy who's making a lot of personnel decisions. And I don't know what to expect from that. You look at that. You look at the injury to Greenlaw, like you said. You look at the injury to Huff. I don't know that they're totally sold on Huff being the starter there. I wouldn't be shocked if they, depending on how they draft, if they don't continue to look at safety as training camp approaches. But ultimately, I think some of the depth has gone away a little bit. And then there's so much turnover on the defensive line. I mean, on paper, we like some of the things that we're seeing, but we don't know how it's going to play. Was that a one-year thing for Hargrave, or is he just an older player now and he's starting to regress? I think there's so many questions on this defense. And for me, I think that that's a recipe where this team continues to become more of an offensive team. We talked about it really last offseason. We started that trend on how it was going to be more of an offensive team. I think that trend continues into this year, and I would expect that this defense doesn't rank as high in points per game given up. I think we're going to see some regression there, and they're not going to be able to rely on their defense in ways that they have in the past. So I'll go with the whole defense to take a step back.
Brutal.
I know. It's hater. Really, I'm a hater. All right. Let's talk about something positive, though, because there may be areas where they take a step back, but there's also going to be areas where we see improvement on this team. So where do you expect to see the 49ers improve this upcoming season?
Yeah, and let's keep it on defense because I picked a position group that I think is gonna regress a little bit. I actually am possibly higher on the defensive line than you might be. I don't necessarily see the huge drop off from the defense. I still think they'll be top 5, and I think it's because the secondary is actually gonna improve this season. And I think, Mooney Ward is starting to really make himself a bona fide, CB1 in the league. I think people are starting to recognize him as, hey, this guy can be a lockdown type guy and can, lock up these bigger receivers that tend to be the guys that are coming out of the draft right now. I think Diamador Lenore, obviously has shown what he's capable of on the outside and definitely as a nickel corner. And I like the guy that they just signed. I don't know how to pronounce his name quite yet. The guy that came from New Orleans.
Yadam.
Yadam, yeah.
Yadam. Yeah.
Yadam seems to be a gem that a lot of people may not have known his name, but based off of the numbers, based off of what he's been able to do on the field, for those that watch tape, seems like he could be a steal. And then once again, it seemed like Kyle Shanahan was looking for a secondary guy based off of all of his interviews for the defensive coordinator position. And he ended up going with, a secondary coach in Nick Sorensen. So to me, I think that's what can elevate. And with the defensive line, I think having more depth and more fresh, healthy bodies, productive bodies, along with the secondary increasing, can make up for maybe some of the decline that I think is going to happen with the linebacker tree. So,
I like it. Okay. We're going to have to remember this episode. We won't, I'm sure, but somebody might hold us accountable if one of us has to be wrong, right? We took two opposite stances on what we think should happen with the defense. So somebody's got to remember this episode, but either way, that's interesting. We definitely are opposite there. Okay. I think I'm going to surprise everybody here with this one, including yourself, Sunil. I think even though the players are the same, the offensive line is going to improve this year. I think the offensive line will improve this year.
Look at positive Jesse coming in. Optimistic Jesse makes it into the show.
Yeah, hold on. I didn't say it was going to be great. Okay, let's not go too far. All right, we got to be a little negative. No, I think when you look at things just as a whole, you've still got the best left tackle in the game, presumably, assuming he doesn't take a major step back. You've got a left guard who is going into his third year starting, right? You've got a right guard who's, whether it's Feliciano or Burford, if it's Feliciano, and it's probably going to be, he's a veteran. We know what we get. But also, I think Burford's going to see some improvement. You're going to see improvement on McKivitz, who's going into, what is it, going to be his second year starting? And then Brendel, are we going into year 3 with Brendel already?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, last year was the second year.
Yeah, so year 3 with Brendel. So you've got a bunch of players that are going to, I think, improve. And collectively as a unit playing together for a second straight year, I expect to see the offensive line make an improvement. Now, I would love it if they were to draft some guys that I think should be the future at offensive line and really might even be better players today. But assuming that they don't make those moves in the draft, this offensive line as it sits now, I believe can be slightly better than it was last year. So I'm going to go with the offensive line.
Yeah, and that was on my list as well to mention, because not only the continuity, which I think is extremely important. I think people from a fan base perspective don't understand how important continuity along the offensive line really is. Like, if you keep the same unit together longer versus constantly bringing in guys that even you think might be better players, the offensive line is somewhere where sometimes the unit that's been together longer actually can play better than even the more talented unit that it doesn't have as much continuity. And because of a lot of the NFL rules on the offseason and how the position is coached at the collegiate level and what they actually see compared to the NFL level, that continuity really, really plays a role. So I do expect better there, but I am fully confident that the 49ers are going to invest high draft capital into the offensive line in this year and next year. But just this year, Jesse, even if those guys don't ultimately come in and start year one, they're going to be there in practice pushing these guys to be better, because now you have a first round pick or a second round pick behind you that has the capability of maybe being a starter on a worse team. Let's put it that way, that isn't necessarily contending, but potentially could be even a great player on a contender. So I think that elevates everybody as a starter as well. So to me, yeah, I think that the offensive line is going to get better. And for everybody that, obviously the offensive line, we all admit could be probably is the weakness on this team. It still was a good enough offensive line to make it to a Super Bowl, right? So if they're even improving marginally, and we hope they take, more than just a marginal increase, that's only going to bode well for a starting quarterback that's having a full offseason and is, second full year starting, another year of CMC being fully acclimated to the system, and potentially all of the weapons in Debo, Aiyuk, Kittle, Jennings, all coming back. Like, all of that, I think, points in the right direction for the 49ers, taking that next step forward with their offense, which was already a pretty darn good offense last season.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a very, very good offense last season. And hopefully, if the offensive line improves, then they improve as a whole on offense as well, especially in some of those big games, because there were some times where the offense sputtered a little bit, which was surprising and unfortunate. John says, off topic, but how does the new kickoff rule affect your roster? Yeah, I mean, I think we're seeing some things around the league where the Chiefs went out and got a rugby guy. I think that's in direct correlation with the kickoff rule. I would like to see Debo back there, but I also think that the 49ers need a punt returner as well. So we'll see if maybe they draft somebody late in the draft or bring in somebody as an undrafted free agent that can fill that role. I think there's some guys in this draft that certainly could. But yeah, I don't think that it's going to have like a major impact where you're going to have major roster turnover, but you could see a scenario, I believe, where maybe like Mitchell or Mason or even Debo are back there returning kicks. So we'll see how it goes. My brother Bob says post June 1st, save $20 million by cutting Hargrave and 15 Kittle. And I think he's talking about next year, I believe, brother Bob, because
Kittle's
they just restructured. They just restructured those gentlemen. So it has to be next year. So we'll see. Shades by Shardall says, but Jesse hates that new corner. I don't hate him. I'm just trying to temper expectations. I have no reason to hate Isaac Yiadom, but a lot of people are making it sound like he's just a lock to be the starter opposite of Ward. And I don't necessarily think that he's a major upgrade over what they have. He's been a spot starter in his career. He's took him until the age of 28 to finally do something as an actual player in this league other than special teams. So I just don't think that he's like this locked answer opposite of Ward. I don't believe that. I don't believe they should be done looking. So don't hate him. I just don't think he's necessarily that guy. But we'll see. I'll happily be wrong. Trust me. T-Dub says, Jesse, that draft was rough, respectively. Jake killed it. Yeah, we just did a mock draft over on the NFC West Roundtable. Jake definitely killed it. He always is great at those things. But I disagree. I don't think it was rough for us. I mean, you look at it, you've got Banks as a free agent for the 49ers this upcoming season, or this next season. Feliciano's a free agent. McKivitz, we already know that would be great to upgrade. And then you've also got the chance that Trent Williams retires. And I think Morgan can step in possibly day one and be your right tackle. If not, I think he could definitely play guard year one. And then I believe that I got the best guard in the draft, arguably, in round 2 as well. And, he definitely could start day one. So, at the very least, you might have your future left tackle and left guard ready to go day one next year if Trent Williams does retire and Banks walk. So, I loved it. And then I feel like I drafted Kyrie Jackson as well out of Oregon. I think he's a major upgrade instantly at corner number 2, way better than Yiadom or Ambry Thomas or any of those guys. So I think it comes down to what you like mock drafts are just that. They're mocks. And there's a lot of prospects out there. Some are going to pan out. Some aren't. So Brother Bob says, but will Kyle Levy improve? He's our real Achilles. Well, Sunil doesn't think he has to improve, and I'm not going to bank on him improving. So there's your short answer.
I literally on this show just said that he needs to improve, but whatever. These narratives will continue to be created. I know why you put that up, Brother Bob. And look, I'm gonna meet you face to face, bro. So keep watch yourself, my man. Watch yourself.
Oh, that's awesome. Sunil, I think this is a perfect time to end the show. I got some things I got to take care of. We got it in under an hour. Appreciate you as always, brother. We'll be back at it next Tuesday. Everybody in the chat, stay blessed. I'll be back most likely tomorrow night for sure with Grant, probably a call-in show or something on this channel. Stay tuned. We'll be back tomorrow. Peace.